Drugs do often come with side effects, and you may get them, you may not, but they are a possibility and they are there. And so then once we get that damage to the gut lining, then we start to have this intestinal permeability. You probably hear that as leaky gut. And so we have these things coming out of our gut lining. Think of your gut lining like a cheesecloth. You want these teeny tiny little particles permeating through the cheesecloth to get into the bloodstream where we absorb nicely. And once we start getting tears there, then particles that are bigger than intended can get out of the gut lining. And then your immune system is going to say, alert, alert, we have these food sensitivities. And when we get that activation, that can actually trigger a headache.
Welcome to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host, Jenn Trepeck, talking wellness and weight loss for real life. We're here to clear up the myths, misinformation, bad science, and marketing to teach you how to eat and how to cheat. Are you ready? I'm having salad with a side of fries. Hey friend, welcome back to another episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host, Jenn Trepeck. As you know, always here with you every week. And we have a lot of new listeners, so welcome, welcome. We're so glad you're here. And I'm really looking forward to today's conversation because, if you can believe this, more than 45 million Americans complain about headaches each year. And migraines affect more than 10% of people worldwide. What that means is that each of us knows a lot of people who could benefit from this conversation. To help us understand it all, I have the perfect guest for us, so let me introduce you. She is a functional medicine practitioner, best-selling author, podcast host, and speaker. In her virtual functional medicine practice, she works with patients worldwide to heal the root cause of their health struggles through advanced diagnostic testing and personalized support. She's been seen on Fox News Channel, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and in Reader's Digest, Health Magazine, and has appeared on many podcasts. She is particularly passionate about helping people end headaches and migraines, increase energy, restore mental clarity without drugs or overwhelming protocols with her proven EAT method. Please help me welcome Dr. Meg Mill.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you're here and we get to have another conversation.
Yes, I know. I've missed talking with you.
I know. So everybody, our last chat was, I think it was fall of 2022. Check out A Little Bit Healthier, right? Meg's podcast. We talked about burning fat as fuel without keto.
Yes, that was a great conversation.
Loved it. And I always, now we get to sort of feature your expertise. And I always like to start with our guest story, but so that I don't disrupt our flow too much. Let's start with telling our members what they're getting, and then we'll get right into it. Cool?
Yes, great.
So members, your recipe this week is for shrimp and cauliflower bake. This is one of those meals where like the oven does all the work. It's super simple. The whole meal in one pan, great for dinner. Leftovers could be an awesome breakfast or lunch too. It's easy, delicious. Clearly, I can't say enough about it, so I highly recommend. In addition to your recipe, Dr. Meg is offering our members $50 off her Headstrong program. So Meg, give us like the 20-30-second overview of Headstrong.
Absolutely. So we're going to get into in this episode a lot about how I work with headaches and migraines. And because I've seen so many successes, stories, and hundreds of people, I actually created a program specifically for headaches and migraines. And this is an 8-week program. And it takes you through all of the steps that I have done with my one-on-one clients and with many people in the program before you to really say goodbye to your headaches and migraines for good, really in this more natural way so that we're really decreasing the severity and the incidence of migraines.
Oh, I love it so much. You guys, this is amazing. And of course, it's March, the last month of the quarter, which means you also get your live quarterly Q&A. We're doing it as a one-on-one because I'm traveling a bunch. So you can pick a time that works for you. There are also times in April. The only catch is that you have to book it in March. So I can't wait to hear your voice. So if you want this recipe, $50 off Meg's Headstrong program, or you want to hop on the phone, just you and me, be sure you're a member. You go to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries. For $10 a month, you get weekly recipes, a monthly article or tool, extra discounts from me, our partners, and guests, plus access to live Q&A sessions. It's a total deal. When you take advantage of the full offering, you are saving far more than that $10 cost. With this week alone, you save like a year and a half worth of money. I mean, it's amazing. So make sure you become a member, a no-brainer way to make yourself and your health a priority. Plus, being a member supports this podcast and this community so that we can continue to do this with you every week. So remember, you go to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries, or just click the link in the show notes because frankly, that's easier. Once you're there, you click support now, enter your email and payment, click subscribe, and you're all set. You'll get this week's recipe for the shrimp and cauliflower bake, $50 off Headstrong from Meg, and your quarterly live session that will be just me and you for 30 minutes. All right, Dr. Meg, I know you see this, with your podcast too, but so many of us in this space come to our work in wellness through our own experiences. So will you share your story with us and, how you came not only to functional medicine, but also headaches and migraines?
Yeah. So I actually started out in the conventional side of medicine. And so it was a 23-year-old. I had graduated. I was a PharmD, and then I went on and did a residency and was practicing in ambulatory care in clinics in the hospital. And I was just starting to have all these gut issues and then anxiety, which now at the time I didn't know, but was related to my gut issues. And I kept moving. We kind of moved around a lot at that time. And I would go to a gastroenterologist and say I was having all this, and they basically say like, you're fine, you're young, kind of blow me off. And then finally I'd go to someone else. Yeah, it's really disappointing. But, and then I finally got the colonoscopy and endoscopy, but then they're like, nothing's wrong. You have IBS, and sort of slapped this label on. And I was just having all of these issues. I'm like, no, I don't feel fine. There got to be a point where I'm like, I can't even eat without getting stomach pain. I never know what's going to make me sick, all of these. So I'm kind of like was having this personal journey where I was having all these symptoms that were unanswered. I couldn't get any help, any explanation. I'm trying to, and here I'm in medicine and can't get it. And then on the flip side, the people I'm working with when in my career are just getting put on more and more medications. And I know the protocols, I know why they are, but they're really just surviving, not thriving. And I felt like it was just disappointing to see this place where people weren't getting better, where we're just maintaining. And so I always have believed in more of a natural, holistic way in preventative medicine. But I wasn't seeing that really enacted. And so it kind of made me go on this health journey for finding answers and finding natural ways. And then I would go to the other extreme and I'd seek out these really holistic ways that were maybe too extreme the other way. And I'm not getting the right, not getting the answers that way. And I'm trying these weird things. And I just couldn't find the space. But it wasn't until I found functional medicine, because with functional medicine, we're using data, we're using testing, we're using like real biological getting answers, but we're doing it in a natural way, in a way that actually sustains healing, that's looking for the root cause. And really finding those root causes can make you feel that healing and experience that change in your health. And so once I found functional medicine, I was able to heal my own gut, heal myself. And then I was like, okay, this is the path I want to take. So I went and worked on certifications and became certified and all of that and opened a practice to help people. So now I have practice that I see people worldwide, and we really get to the root cause of their health issues and restore the body's natural ability to heal. But when I opened my practice, I started noticing this trend. And it was that I just kept, I work primarily with women. I do work with men too, but I work with a lot of women. And particularly in women, I would see women come to me either with headaches and migraines, that's the reason they're showing up, that are so bad, they're having these monthly migraines as long as they can remember, or even 10 times a month, 20 times a month, that it's really affecting their life. Or the other flip side was I would be seeing people for different reasons, maybe autoimmunity, maybe gut health. And they fill out a detailed intake questionnaire and a symptom questionnaire when they start. And in that questionnaire, they would say, oh, I get a headache every week, or I have migraines, 3 times a month. And it was normalized. Like that's not why they were there. They just felt like, oh, this is something I have to deal with. I have to live with, like, there's no solution for me. And so they're dealing with this pain, and they didn't even have to be. So it really raised my awareness. Wow. Like when you're saying that, this is a $17 billion industry that we're really not trying to solve, because we're just saying like, okay, here, take some medication, cover up the pain, which is actually causing often more issues in the long run. Because, if you're taking Advil every week for your headache, you're actually destroying your gut lining, which can cause, we'll talk more about it, but which actually can cause more headaches. So it's all of these things that we're doing just to kind of band-aid it and not really solve it. And so I started working with people, and then they'd be like, oh my gosh, I can't even believe this. I'm not getting migraines anymore. I'm not having headaches. I feel better. And it was so surprising that, like, yes, you don't have to live with it. And so I became passionate about spreading this word to people.
Yeah, I love it so much. And I think your perspective is so interesting too, coming from the PharmD background, right? Understanding pharmacology and saying these are Band-Aids, right? So talk us through, I guess, the place to start is the conventional Western medicine approach to head discomfort, right? I come from the supplement world of we aren't allowed to say migraines anymore.
Yeah, okay.
But you know what I mean? Like, what is sort of the baseline of what people are used to now, so that people who maybe don't experience them also understand sort of what we're talking about?
Mm-hmm. So basically what we're doing in conventional, and the most encompassing treatment in the conventional space is to treat your pain. So we're looking at the migraine or the headache. We'll just use the head pain or headache. And they're saying, okay, we want you to not be in pain. So we're going to give you something that takes away the pain. But when we're doing this, what are we really doing often to treat the actual reason? And we also want to look outside of just the head, because migraines and headaches can happen for many different reasons in your body. And so it's actually, you're really looking at that symptom of pain. It's kind of giving you that signal. So instead of quieting that signal and just taking the pain away, like, okay, we have that, let's just get that to go away. We say, okay, like, what is the signal? Let's actually acknowledge the signal and put the pieces together and look at why you're having it. And so, most likely you're going to get, we see actually like Advil and Tylenol and Excedrin and things like that over the counter that people can just buy. And then you can get into other prescription medications. We don't need to dive into all of those, but the most common reason that you're taking those are actually to cover up the pain. I like an analogy. It's a silly analogy, but you say if you take your car to the mechanic and they give you walk and you hand them their keys and they come back and they give you your keys back with a pair of earmuffs, would you feel safe driving your car? And we were like, no, we wouldn't, you're like, you didn't fix anything. You're just covering it up. And we would like not, we wouldn't do that, but we're willing to just cover up our pain and feel like that's okay, because that's what we've been taught to do. And it's the drug companies giving us a lot of the education too. So they're the deep pockets that are actually educating and spreading that word. And so we feel like, oh, okay, yep, that's the answer. But when you actually look at it differently, you can actually get a resolution without having to take the medication.
Yeah. And those medications too, not the pharma companies are funding the research also. So there's a lot more research on those things than other options. And I also think you started to touch on this before about like the impact on the lining of the gut with, taking Advil all the time or over-the-counter options. So like, walk us through, maybe somebody doesn't understand, like, why is this such a flawed approach beyond the Band-Aid piece?
Mm-hmm. Well, because so the NSAIDs are, actually there's studies, we know that they actually damage the lining to the gut. The mechanism of action is, and like we could go back into some of the, if you look at the early 2000s, even the drug companies were trying to make the COX-1 inhibitors, or the COX-2 inhibitors, because there's different forms of cyclooxygenase. And when we knew that they actually disrupted the lining of the gut and that there were all these side effects. So we're saying like, okay, let's try to do this and make them selective so that they're not doing that. But when we did that and you got things like Celebrex and Mobic and different things, then they started to cause more cardiovascular effects, causing that selectivity. So then they were all pulled off the market. So it was like this $1 billion, like everybody's on these now because they're better. And then let's pull them off because they're bad. But that's not something that's not known, but we take them anyway because they do treat pain. Let's be honest. You can actually take them and have your pain go away. So people want that. And we're not thinking about some of these side effects. So drugs do often come with side effects, and you may get them, you may not, but they are a possibility and they are there. And so then once we get that damage to the gut lining, then we start to have this intestinal permeability. You probably hear that as leaky gut. And so we have these things coming out of our gut lining. Think of your gut lining like a cheesecloth. You want these teeny tiny little particles permeating through the cheesecloth to get into the bloodstream where we absorb nicely. And once we start getting tears there, then particles that are bigger than intended can get out of the gut lining. And then your immune system is going to say, alert, alert, we have these food sensitivities. And when we get that activation, that can actually trigger a headache.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, that brings us into a lot of autoimmune things. And we've talked about some of these before. I think I called the episode, Where Does the Food Go? To literally talk through, everything. Yes. And another thing in the pain work, that I've been doing over the last couple of years, it's also interesting to me how a lot of the medications used for pain actually heighten our sensitivity to pain because of how they work, right? Have you seen that too?
Yeah. And, the stress will come into that too, because stress can increase different hormones that can increase pain sensitivity. So, I like to call it the chain of pain, because we see all these different things that are actually affecting pain. And stress is a big one, because you have stress and that can increase different hormones. One of those can be prolactin, actually, and that can increase pain sensitivity. And you have where you're stuck, like pain, because stress is biological too. So we think of stress as we think of, oh, we're stressed out, our busy to-do list, everything that we have going on, but we actually can have biological stress. So when we have things like pain that is a stressor, we're increasing cortisol, and then cortisol can increase other things that can increase pain sensitivity. So we just need to get out of some of these chain of pain. And really, when we're talking about it from that stress perspective, just doing things like finding things that resonate with you, maybe doing some box breathing. I always tell people to do that when you're not stressed, because when you're in that stress, when you're anxious and stressed, it's hard to do because you're already shallow breathing. You're already in this space. But if we take some time when we're not stressed, we can actually train our body to become back into that parasympathetic nervous system and bring ourselves in that nice, calm place. And then when you're feeling that, you actually have that muscle memory to be able to do it, or anything that really resonates with you. Like some people like to meditate, some people like to go for a walk in nature, some things just to really just start to bring your body back in that calm space.
I love it. And so this is sort of transitioning us into more of what we want to focus on, which is what are some of our other options and how can we look at the root cause of the headache and address it from a functional nutrition, functional medicine approach. So let's shift into that after a quick message from our partner for this episode. Yes?
Yes.
Big thanks to DNA Miracles for supporting Salad with a Side of Fries. Because every child is a miracle, DNA Miracles provides the highest quality body and wellness products designed for babies, children, and expectant mothers. All products are gentle, easy to use, and 100% effective when used as directed. DNA Miracles partner with leading health professionals and scientists who follow the highest standards in ingredient selection to create the most effective skin, hair, and health solutions. As natural as possible, DNA Miracles is the best and safest option on the market for you and your little miracle. From expert pediatricians to real family testimonials, everyone has fallen in love with DNA Miracles. So I don't know about you, but I feel like I know a lot of babies being born or soon to be born. So maybe you need a gift. I highly recommend the DNA Miracles Natural Bath Time Bundle. So it's a great gift, comes in a super cute gift box. It gives you the natural foaming wash and shampoo, the natural hydrating baby lotion, the natural diaper cream, and the natural soothing ointment. Everything is specifically formulated for newborns, but I have to tell you, it's great for the whole family. So think about skin to skin contact, right? Everything that's on everybody else's skin is touching baby too. So worth considering. And I should mention all 4 products are full sizes in the bundle, all for a whopping $41.50. And that is before your 10% off and free shipping for being a Salad with a Side of Fries listener. So simply text the word miracles, MIRACLES, plural, miracles, to 844-947-4846. You'll receive the link and coupon code right to your phone. Again, simply text the word miracles to 844-947-4846. This is a toll-free number. Standard text and data rates may apply. Okay, back to you, Dr. Meg. So in thinking about like root cause approach, I know off the top of my head, like hormones, food, we started to talk about stress, toxins can all play into this. So maybe walk us through each one.
That's kind of a basic place to start. And I think it can be confusing because if you may have heard, if you're someone who's been suffering for a long time of the migraine diet, there's different approaches to food. And what can be confusing is there's sort of different buckets of food problems. So we know there are certain foods that trigger migraines statistically, but it's not the same for every person. And so it's really becoming kind of your own detective, I would say, where you're really trying to discover what foods trigger you, because you could be different than the next person. We know things like histamine foods or think of like avocados or fermented foods with histamine. You want to think of tyramine, which could be like aged or cured foods, even salicylates, which are citrus. So lemons can trigger some people. Then we have like MSG, which would kind of be more of something you'd think that's in like boxed and prepared foods. Aspartame, which is in diet sodas, even some food, different dyes and coloring. And caffeine is, some people use that to treat, but that there can be a rebound effect there with caffeine. So you want to look at those foods, and then you want to look at sort of your threshold, because you could maybe eat a certain amount of it, but when you go over that threshold, that's too much for you, or a combination of some of those foods can be a problem. And so really kind of starting to look at, if you get a headache, what have you eaten in the past 48 hours? Because we'll get next to food sensitivities, but they can happen up to 48 hours later. So you could have eaten something yesterday that's triggering your headache today, and you may not be thinking about it because you're like, oh, well, I had that yesterday and it's been a while. That's not an issue, but it can be an issue for you. So sometimes I have people just like print out a blank calendar, write down what you ate that day and the day before when you get your headache, and just start to look for patterns. Do you see any of these same patterns? You don't necessarily need to cut like every food out of your diet, but you need to start looking at patterns for you and where you're starting to see some of the, it's so interesting. It really is like things that people start to find out once they sort of take this look of like, oh, wow, lemons are something that makes me have a headache, or olives or something that, triggers it, and different things come up, and you start to become self-aware. And then once you have that awareness, you can use it to your advantage and really, focus on those foods. Now, then there's food sensitivities, which I brought up a little bit earlier. And that's particular to each individual. So for me, I will test them, like when I'm working with people, or even in my program, Headstrong, we do a food sensitivity test so that those exact foods that you're reacting to. But really those are individual, those are foods. If you do have somewhat of an intestinal permeability that come up, you get these IgG antibody reactions. So we want to pull those out for 90 days, and then we reintroduce those foods. And usually after a period of time, you can tolerate them.
Well, so there's a couple things in here. I mean, number one, I love that you pointed out that even if we do an elimination, we add them back in. I think so many people end up caught in this sort of spiral of ending up eating 4 things.
Yes.
No,
I want you to expand. And that's where I guess I think people are confused, because it's like, okay, here we have a big list of foods, but we're not doing this to like not eat. We're doing this to eat smart, I guess I would say.
Yeah. And like you said, to be the detective, to figure out what's the thing that you added back in, or what's the threshold of when you add it back in, and things like that. It's funny. And you were talking about even some of the food additives. So a friend of mine is allergic or, reacts to annatto, which is often added to things that make things orange, right? It's often added to salmon to enhance the color of salmon. So she just doesn't eat salmon out, or if she doesn't know. And interesting, we were traveling together. She had taken 2 packets of Emergency and ended up with migraines for a few days and missed most of the conference that we were going to.
Oh, yeah.
But you
feel like, okay, I'm taking the Emergency because I want to boost my immunity, and it's not something that you're thinking you're doing that's going to cause your migraine. But when you have this awareness, it really helps you to like hone in on those specific things.
Yeah. And even that, she put it together doing what you said of like, well, what happened in the last 48 hours? Yeah.
Yes. And sometimes like the other thing is pairing. So That's where it's like, okay, did you eat something that has histamine with something that has tyramine and you paired them together? And so there's all sorts of different things that we can look at to really hone it in for you individually.
I love it. All right. So that sort of gets us on the food piece of it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Where do we go next? Hormones?
Yeah, let's go to
Stress?
hormones because that's a really big one.
Yeah.
That's like something that women, so many women have these hormonal migraines. And so you're thinking if you're getting these cyclical headaches right before your period or when you ovulate or right when you start your period, there is likely a hormonal component. And when we think of hormones and headaches, we think of estrogen dominance and a rapid change in hormones. Those are the two most common. There can be different dynamics, but those are the two most common. And so then we want to look at, if you are estrogen dominant, why? Do you have really high levels of estrogen or do you have low progesterone? And often when it comes to migraines, I actually don't see these overwhelmingly high levels of estrogen. It actually often has to do with estrogen metabolism and how we are excreting our estrogen. So there's 3 phases of estrogen metabolism. We have 2 phases in the liver and 1 in your gut. And we have to make sure that I always say with estrogen, you want to use it or lose it. You want to have enough estrogen that you have the effects that we need, but you want to be able to clear it. And if you're not clearing it right from your body, some of these metabolites are more proliferative and stronger. And so you could be feeling like you're, have all of these estrogenic effects because we need to improve your clearance, your liver health, and your gut health. So it's really, I think when it comes to hormonal migraines, it really is good to do the testing because you can see it. Hormones are all about balance and you can see where your balance is. And all we need to do is really make some tweaks to get the right balance for you. And then you don't get the migraines. You also don't get the cramping or the like the bloating or all the other, the mood swings, all the other things that come along. So those are some good side effects, right? When we're using improvement of symptoms as side effects.
Exactly. I love it. And we talked about stress a little bit before too, but I'm really curious because as you're talking, I'm thinking of a friend of mine who often gets migraines connected to the weather.
Mm-hmm.
What's that about?
Yeah, and that can also be barometric pressure. So that one's a little bit harder. In my Headstrong group, we had this whole big discussion about barometric pressure because, there are going to, and it like about, and I dug in like this deep into negative ions and all of the, the way that affects. So sometimes, with extreme pressure changes, it is hard to deal with that. Some people just have that. So there are certain things sometimes that are out of our control, but what we're trying to do is get as much as we can in our control so that you're bringing your threshold down. And then even if something like that does bother you, like if there's a huge weather swing that you can't, didn't predict or can't do anything about, you're at a place where, okay, maybe you'll get the headache, but maybe you're not going to get, or maybe that will bother you, but you're not going to go into that full blown migraine.
Okay, got it. And so you mentioned here that there are also things that we can do so that the elements that we can't do anything about, right, it's not as potentially dramatic, right? So in thinking about the things we can do, you mentioned box breathing before, probably a good idea. We can remind everybody about that. And then on the edge of my seat to hear what else you recommend.
Well, let's just even go back to, some of the things can be more in depth, but let's just go really back to basics. So hydration. So stay hydrated. You want to make sure you're hydrated at a cellular level. So you want to make sure you're drinking, aim about half your body weight in ounces of water daily, and then sip it through the day. Because when it comes to headaches, we want to really make sure that we're getting that cellular hydration. So when you drink all your water at once, you can excrete it more likely because you're getting everything at once. It's just going through you and your body's not absorbing everything. So, and then even maybe adding some electrolytes into the water can help with absorption. So you really want to make sure that you're staying hydrated and focused there. Another thing is sleep is an independent risk factor for headaches. And so you think like, I know, you want that extra hour maybe at night that you can just stay out, but really prioritizing sleep. We know that there is direct association with lack of REM sleep and headaches. So just making sure that you're really that you're going to bed, that you're getting sleep and prioritizing that. So those are, free, easy things that you can just add into your life that aren't complicated to do. It's just making them a priority.
Yeah, and I love these. And I've had a lot of clients with success with magnesium.
Mm-hmm, yes. Mm-hmm. So magnesium is a very common mineral deficiency with headaches. So we want to look at that's something that I usually do end up supplementing because there is that deficiency. So, but even like getting it through foods, you can look at like pumpkin seeds as a food that has a lot of magnesium. There's different forms of magnesium. So, when it comes to headaches, I do tend to like magnesium glycinate. I've seen so many people have success with that form. But there's different forms depending, on what else you have going on in your body that we choose that particular right form of magnesium for. I actually did on my podcast on A Little Bit Healthier, I did an episode on all the different types of magnesium and why you should use them, because it's not like, oh, magnesium's the same. And especially I see so many people using magnesium oxide because that's what's most common in the drugstore. So if you're like, oh, if you run out and you think like, oh, I'm going to go get magnesium, you're most likely going to find, if you just run into a pharmacy, oxide, and oxide is not absorbed as well. And so you may be taking magnesium and not getting the absorption that you're intending to and the effects that you want to from that magnesium too, which is something that isn't widely known all the time either.
Yeah, for sure. Not all supplements are created equal.
Yeah. I'm very particular about which ones I use because you see a big drastic effect depending on what supplement you're using. But you can just start to boost magnesium in your food. Another one is riboflavin, actually. B2 is a common deficiency when we get, when it comes to headaches and migraines. So that's a water soluble supplement. So that's not, you can supplement with that. You can, also try to add some foods there. So it's just getting some of the, we want to look at repleting mineral deficiencies at the same time that we're taking out the foods that can be inflammatory and causing issues. And so we just need to kind of shift that seesaw.
Yeah, I love that idea, the seesaw too. And so if somebody maybe hasn't done the food sensitivities test, there are a couple that you see are some of the big culprits more often.
Yeah, so I would say the most common food sensitivities are gluten and dairy. So, you can start there. But that being said, when I do test, it's very interesting because there are foods that come up. Like in the last group of Headstrong, it was like there was someone in that group that had peas and she was eating pea protein. So you're eating, maybe you think I'm going to stay away from dairy. So I'm not going to get whey protein because that has dairy in it. So I'm going to get a vegan protein. So it's, and most of those are pea based. So here she's like doing things to create this dynamic where she's having a reaction to the pea. And then once she pulled that pea protein out, she noticed a huge difference. And so that's where I get conflict. Like you can do an elimination diet and those are the most common, but sometimes it can be things that you're really not expecting. And so when you pull those things out, it can make a big difference. So, but you can start there. Gluten and dairy are definitely the most common.
Yeah, there's also an interesting piece to that popped into my head too, is the threshold piece. Like I know when I was doing some food sensitivities testing, the practitioner said to me, like, if you eat something all the time, it can show up as a sensitivity, even if it's not necessarily, and there's sort of that threshold piece. So there's so many factors, I think, involved that almost taking anything at face value and just drawing a line in the sand is probably doing us a disservice.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. And that's why working with someone is nice because it gives you the roadmap. I feel like in some of these things, there's so much like, well, what do I do? And I guesswork and I'm trying to, I see people that are like, I'm piecing this and that. And I heard this and I read that. And it's all confusing. And so sometimes when you have someone that you can work with, it's just that roadmap of like, okay, here you go. This is what you need to do. It cuts through all of that overwhelm and kind of gives you that picture and that place to just follow to know what to do to feel better.
Yeah. So that actually brings me to my next question, which is, you work with people, remotely all over the world, but there are some people who are like, look, I want to go in and see a person and, touch flesh, right? Shake hands, those kinds of things. How do you recommend somebody find a practitioner near them who, we know is taking the functional medicine approach to headaches?
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because I would say you can Google functional medicine near me. Now, it is a very wide variety of people though that, so one, people have specialties, two, people practice differently. So that's a hard question because, I I have worked with people like, oh, well, I've already worked with someone and I don't feel bad. And you're like, well, maybe that wasn't the right person for you. So it's finding that right person for you can be tricky. But if you are looking for someone in your local area, then I would just say Google. I mean, I think the easiest way is just to Google functional medicine near me and then give them a call and see what how they work with people.
Yeah. And I guess any tips or tricks for somebody who, maybe has more of the traditional physicians, the neurologist, and wants to bring some of these ideas to the table, but maybe isn't necessarily sure how to phrase it so that doctor will be receptive. Any recommendations on that front?
That's a hard one.
I know and everybody's different. So,
Yeah. So I think just go in and, talk in an educated manner of like, okay, this is, I do think that most neurologists will be aware of like the magnesium, the riboflavin, things like that if you want to try. I don't know that most of them are going to get into diet, hormone balance, all that, because, with conventional medicine, I guess this is the biggest difference. One of them, in conventional medicine, we bucket into specialties. So we bucket into like, you're going to go to your neurologist for your migraines, and you're going to go to your gynecologist for your hormones, and you're going to go to your gastroenterologist for your stomach. And they're not always talking, so it's like, you're going here, you're going there. And so when we're looking at this from a functional perspective, we're actually putting all those pieces together. We're saying like, okay, this is actually, your underlying gut issues are affecting your headaches. Your hormone imbalances are affecting your headaches. Your food are affecting your headaches. All of these things can affect it. So it's just this different approach where we're really bringing everything together. And they are probably looking at it from a more narrow perspective of their specialty.
Yeah, agreed. So before we do our rapid fire off topic questions, anything, wrap this up, like anything we missed or, a key takeaway you want everyone to remember?
I guess I just want everyone to remember that, like, if you're suffering for a long time and you've had headaches and your whole life and you've been told like this is just something that you've had to deal with it, I see people all the time make these huge transformations. So it is possible for you.
Love it. All right. Are you ready? Our rapid fire off topic questions.
Ready.
Okay. What's the best thing you've done for your health this week? What's the naughtiest thing you've done related to your health this week?
That's funny. Well, I think the best thing, I just went to bed really early. I think sleep is so huge and I used to not prioritize it. So this week I did have a day where I'm like, I am just going to bed. My family was up. I do have teens, so they're a little bit, they're able to put themselves to bed. But I did actually just call it a night and get a good night's sleep and recognize that, because that's something I used to skip on. I did have a scone that I'm like, feel like I'm like telling on myself. Right. I don't do wonderful with gluten, and I don't have celiac, but I don't eat a whole lot of gluten personally because of issues. But I did have a scone this weekend that was delicious, and I was kind of really glad I ate it. But I kind of felt achy the next day, so I paid.
Yeah, I was going to say it sounds amazing, but Mm-hmm. All right, if you weren't a functional medicine practitioner, what would you do?
Ooh, I'd be a movie star.
Ooh.
That's what I wanted to do when I was little. Awesome. I always thought like, oh, someday I'll be a movie star. Didn't happen for me though.
I love it. So funny. All right, your favorite book on any topic. It also could be fiction, but it can't be a book on your area of expertise.
I've read so many books. That's hard for me to pick my favorite. There's a book called Biology of Belief that I find that's very interesting. That's not in my field, but it is in a field that's similar. And I do feel like, you look at the placebo effect and you look at the power of your mind. And I think it does play such a huge role, and we don't take that into account enough. So maybe that's one I would recommend.
Yes. All right. If you could cure one ailment, disease, or sickness, what would it be?
Probably Alzheimer's, because I feel like that's just so hopeless for people. And that's something that is just really not yet at the brink of being able to be cured, but hopefully it will be by the time.
If you were a superhero, what would be your superpower?
I think I'd like to fly. I think it would be really amazing to be able to fly.
What's your biggest pet peeve?
I'm very noise sensitive. So actually when people are playing just different sounds, all like my kids are all on their different devices and I hear like 5 different things going on in my house at the same time. It's like, no, just just one sound at a time.
I get that. All right, last one. In your opinion, what's the next frontier in wellness?
Well, I do think that the microbiome and the gut health is really just such a pinnacle point of all wellness. So, I mean, when you're talking about headaches, we're looking at the microbiome and we're looking at gut health. When we're talking about hormones, when we're talking about skin issues, when we're talking, there's just so much that goes back to the gut. So I think if, we can really be on that frontier of helping everyone be able to heal their gut, that is something that can impact so many.
Agreed. All right. Well, thank you again for being here. Just so appreciate continuing our conversations. Tell everybody where to connect with you, how to find everything you're doing, all the things.
Yeah. So I have a podcast called A Little Bit Healthier, and we talk about all ways that you can be healthier. I'm over on Instagram at Dr. Meg Mill, which is DrMegMill. And my website is just megmill.com. It's MEGMILL.com. I do have a free gift for you that is a guide to start helping your headaches and migraines. So you can go to helpmyheadaches.com and download that free guide. And if you're interested in the program that Jenn was talking about, that's at happinessbeyondheadaches.com.
Amazing. We'll put links to everything in the show notes too. So that brings us to our nutrition nugget. Want to know what it is?
Yes.
All right. So on Friday, we are talking about seaweed.
Ooh, there's a lot of good things in seaweed, like iodine and
Exactly. So check back in on Friday for our nutrition nugget on seaweed. So as always, everybody, I'm your host, Jenn Trepeck. Connect with me on Instagram or really all social media. I am at Jenn Trepeck, JENNTREPECK. Our Facebook page, all the places at that handle, Jenn Trepeck. Website is A Salad with a Side of Fries. Whether it's the website, Facebook, Instagram, whatever platform is your favorite, please send a message. It is my favorite thing to hear your key takeaways, what ideas you have, what questions you have, what do you want us to talk about on the show? And any of these ways is also a perfect way to reach out to inquire about working with me as your health coach. So one more time, if you are not already a member, join our membership program by going to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries to show your support for this podcast, this community, and your health. You'll get this week's recipe for the shrimp and cauliflower bake, $50 off Dr. Meg Mill's Headstrong program, and your quarterly live session that will be just you and me for 30 minutes. It is truly my favorite. Whatever you want to talk about, let's personalize it. You get your questions answered. So until next week, remember, typical treatments for headaches and migraines focus on symptoms, and perhaps our best path forward is to look at the root cause with a functional medicine approach. Well, friends, that's it for today's episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. Congratulations for making yourself and your health a priority. Thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to click subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform. Share us with a friend, and we'll be back next week. Always remember, you deserve it, and you are worth it. Happy healthy.